Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a Rotten Corpus in the honour unto the memory of the institution of Rot and all those who served there and continue to do so. Anyway, over the years I have known and often worked with or alongside Crow, and the following has to be a text, the outlet for which was very much in connection with perhaps a connected project of Crow's, the Imaginary Hospital Radio Project, the notion of radio actually being made in or from or about a hospital, rather than just or only being played for the benefit of the patients or the inmates. I don't know how familiar any of you actually are with most of my work. It's perhaps, you could say it's the same formula in terms of imagery or phrasing or words, that and perhaps obviously overall experience, only it's a lot more corporal or bodily or behavioural than the usual sort of landscapes or architecture or meteorology or force that I tend to usually generate or describe in my stories. So anyway, and I might add that on the CD version of this, and sometimes during performances, which I do with Crow, Son et Lumière by Richard Crow, I actually recite this text using a contact mic directly on my throat, which has a very strange sort of archival feel. Anyway, human shield. Recapitation therapy operations require 3 components. A. Exoskull visor. Then B. Slotted insertion underlay mask implant. And C. Cavity insulation, mummifying bandages. Ordered according to a completely different sequence from predecessors taken over from by exoskull visor, slotted insertion underlay mask implant, and cavity insulation mummifying bandages. The winning formula. Between exoskull visor and slotted insertion underlay mask implant is where cavity insulation mummifying bandages grow, performing emergency life-saving miracle cure cosmetic plastic surgery facelift treatment and healing of injury and symptom. Poised on standby for attendance to damage repair and mistake correction tasks on exoskull visor and slotted insertion underlay mask implant, whom are gratefully indebted to cavity insulation mummifying bandages for these services rendered. When gift wrapping, removal time, moment of truth is due. Exoskull visor, slotted insertion underlay mask implant, and cavity insulation mummifying bandages come off, break up, flake, crumble, melt, dissolve and evaporate away, each taking the others with them as they go, leaving no trace behind of exoskull visor, slotted insertion underlay mask implant, and cavity insulation mummifying bandages, destroying the evidence. Acupuncture, bloodletting, fuel refills, and injected transfusion encourage sloughed scales and flayed hide, molted and shed by exoskull visor, slotted insertion underlay mask implant, and cavity insulation mummifying bandages to mingle together and breed replacement superior strain of exoskull visor, slotted insertion underlay mask implant, and cavity insulation mummifying bandages, giving birth to new and improved selves of their former shadows. Composite of exoskull visor, slotted insertion underlay mask implant, and cavity insulation mummifying bandages consume and feed each other and everything that comes their way. Fusion, uniting exoskull visor, slotted insertion underlay mask implant, and cavity insulation mummifying bandages into one whole, linking up to different separate entities they intercept and encounter. Another work I actually did in connection with Crow, which very much ties in with I would actually say the dossier, or the archival dossier of relics or traces from the or documents from the I suppose hidden or secret history or vaults of the institution of Rot. Is actually an untitled text in two parts, each one a prelude and a sequel to each other, which, if any title at all, is very much, I suppose, a demised premise, which is the housing term which Crow has used, as opposed to prison, the institution of Rot archives. A demised premise. Disembodied, free and loose, but injured and sickly voices gasp their very last breath. Remains compress, adhere, fuse, solidify, and fossilize. Leftovers, resurrecting into cadavers and wreckage, which never quite die out. Instead, they stumble, falter, slow down, and halt during course of duty as active bodies and live places, not at standstill. Substance fatigue claims derelict bodies and dead places. Afflicted victims fracture, shatter, crumble and dissolve until evaporated away. All fumes and sand survived by burns, rust, debris, stains, mould, shadows and clouds lurking behind afterwards. Immortalized voices patrol, haunt and reign, becoming unhindered meteorological weather. It is interesting that when that was first recorded, both in terms of audio and visual recordings of me, it was actually at the former institution of Rot, and it was played at what you might call the wake unto the memory of the institution of Rot, a demised premise, the last ever event known of at that space in Corbin Street in North London in late 2009. And because of when the actual event, the only time the event could take place, I was actually scheduled to be overseas by that time. So it almost became as though it was an event in absentia, almost as though I was tried in my absence, or it was my funeral. But I keep somehow rather beat because I was so familiar with the place, that particular site, and everything I had been told or read or that had come to me about it. It really is almost as though I actually attended a demised premise. I suppose some other things of my own, or that I've done with other people, that could, I suppose, overlap with the institution of Rot, include one of many things I have done that I suppose falls under, site visits, reacting to specific places. There's a project I did, something I did actually many years ago in the very early millennium in Nantes, published in Antwerp. A project I did at one point with some people. I've done other things with them and with other people, but we did do some other sort of site visit projects under the name Disquiet Tectonica. That's myself with Michel Naismith, Nico Dox and Chris Delacourt. Beginning in Nantes in France, when myself, Michel and Nico were on an art residency at the art school in Nantes, and later doing things with Nico Dox and Chris Delacourt in Belgium and even in Venice. And of course I've worked with Michel Naismith and Nico Dox in all manner of places and situations and forms and outlets. But his first project we did was very much came out of running jokes in late 2001 at the beginning of a residency, running jokes about an empty apartment next to the one Michelle somehow or other was living in, and running jokes about whether it was possible to actually enter this place and what might lie beyond. Basically coming up with an excuse to work with a lot of collaged language, real or supposed, and certainly some rather obvious cliches, as I very often in some ways play with. And this is actually the title work for this series of projects, Disquiet Tectonica. But anyway, Disquiet Tectonica. Casually passing by through that same old, all too familiar, and very well known by now, abandoned barn, factory, warehouse, garage, aircraft hangar, prison cell, always leads to dungeon wall, rock face, cliff fortress. Only this time round, gangplanks and drawbridge let down and portcullis rises up, inviting forbidden entry beyond. Carumple zone, pressure point, weak spot in masonry of dungeon wall, rock face, cliff fortress gives way, repairs, heals up, goes back to normal and as good as new all over again. Gangplanks and drawbridge rise up and portcullis let down to slam and snap shut. That same old, all too familiar and very well known by now, abandoned barn, factory, warehouse, garage, aircraft hangar, prison cell are left behind and soon forgotten, with no turning back anymore. Preliminary routine is undertaken of fumigation, vaccine jabs, medical test, strip body search and security check-up, allowing approval to receive an all clear, permitting unhindered, free and easy access throughout. Growing accustomed to these newfound surroundings reveals geological stratification and fossils of landfill, breaker's yard, demolition site and mass burial grave charnel house of skulls and crossbones, also with disused machinery and apparatus lying around in disarray. Turning away from such lumber, a hitherto ignored supermarket in a pristine, immaculate, sterile and synthetic shopping mall, fallen victim to electrical blaze, black gas explosion, arson attack, bombing raid and spontaneous combustion. Preventative obstructions deny access, but merchandise can be seen. Heat, fire, smoke and soot damaged, both thrown about and otherwise intact on careful display. Dense conifers and palms draw near, but part open and then close together again afterwards, helpfully enabling assisted passage along rugged and crooked pathways, cobblestones, streams and pools, embedded with trails of laboratory test tubes, retorts, beakers, flasks and bowls, while bubbling geysers boil, steam and froth. Underfoot, the resonance and vibration of heavy-duty industry, excavation, engineering and vehicles is felt. Slowly, night-time fades to twilight, becoming dawn, then daybreak. Suddenly, the thicket itself abruptly halts, arriving at a clearing, disappearing without a trace. Thereafter, prospects of infinite expanses of vast and never-ending parkland, meadows and pastures continues for further than any eye could ever see, and then some. Anyway, that's the first text from my and Michelle Naismith, Nico Docks and Chris Delacourt's Disquiet Tectonica series, which we ended up describing as a collaborative research project on new audiovisual writing and uncanny architecture. All images constructed and edited by Michelle Naismith. All sounds edited and or generated by Nico Docks and Chris Delacourt. Text and voice by Douglas Park, which was very much the usual lineup of these movies that we did in Nantes, Ghent, Venice and Antwerp between 2001 and 2002, and then 2002, 2003, 2004, as well as other things I've done over the years with mostly Michelle Naismith and Nico Docks, with them or with other people all over the place. Anyway, thank you.